Welcome to Papillion UnScripted, the place to go to be able to talk to the folks that really, truly make Papillion feel like home. I'm Michael Severe, joining us, longtime planning director, and now Deputy Administrator for Community Development, Mark Stursma, joining us today. How are you doing?
Thank you. Very well.
Tell us a little bit about your promotion and what is that community development team going to do?
Yeah, so I've been the planning director for 18 years, and we hired the assistant planning director as my replacement, so he was promoted. And I told him that the planning director job, in my humble but also biased opinion, is that the planning director job at Papillion is the best city planning job in the state of Nebraska. Just wonderful team here, really great political support for good planning, and it's a great community. So I'm excited for him, and I'm excited for the opportunities of this job. Really, my responsibility will now be more oversight of the planning, but also the building department, helping the leadership of those departments work on policy and helping make sure that the city of Papillion works well with developers. We have good policy, that we're developer friendly, but also making sure that we continue to have good regulation, good enforcement of the things that are important to the city. The other thing that I now have more ability to do in this role is represent the city on regional initiatives and commissions and efforts, and do more networking, and in some cases even with the legislature. There's a lot of legislation that could benefit the city, and I think that's one of the goals over time, is that I can be more active in that.
Had a chance to talk to the mayor a couple of weeks ago after the sewer agreement with the county, obviously, and the cities. And he talked about the growth and how many people we're going to see here in Papillion. But he mentioned your name because a lot of people want to keep this feeling like a small town, even though we know there's going to be growth. How do you do that?
Yeah, that's an important consideration in Papillion. The growth is happening, and there are many reasons for that. First and foremost, we're part of an overall metro community. We are strategically located within the metro area, good accessibility to the interstate system, great access within, if you think about it, the 1 hour drive time, very, very great access to our community. So that's going to happen. The pressure is there. The challenge for us is maintaining that small town feel, those values of our community that have got us to this point. And I think that's where community development has a lot of influence, making sure that when development is proposed, it's up to our standards, that it's consistent with our values. And that means quality neighborhoods, places where people want to live, making sure that our recreation system, our parks and our trails are included and incorporated into new development, making sure that we support those activities that are so important to that sense of community. Obviously, we have Papillion Days, but all of the other recreation and civic type of opportunities in our community, those are really important.
Yeah, when you're working with those developers, I know it's important for you to make sure they meet those standards, the city's standards. Does that also help in terms of making it an attractive place for those developers to come, because they know that you're going to hold them to a certain standard, you're going to hold everybody to the same standard?
Yeah, when I started, again, that was 18 years ago, design standards were kind of a new thing, and Papillion was an innovator in that regard. And there were a lot of naysayers who said that you're going to drive away development by having high development standards and having those specific design standards. And obviously, with the amount of development that we've had over the last couple decades, it has not driven away development. In fact, just the opposite. And I have had developers tell me time and time again, the fact that in Papillion we diligently and fairly enforce those standards creates longevity and value in their development. They are confident that we're going to hold everybody to the same standard, and that protects their investment. And so we've actually seen an acceleration of development and fortunately quality development in Papillion. And I would say a big part of that is because we have made a commitment to fairly enforcing those standards.
You referenced a little bit of it, the 1 hour drive time, obviously easy access to I-80 and interstates, Highway 370 and Highway 50, but other reasons why so many of those developers are coming here, especially when they call data centers and some distribution centers? What are some of the other reasons why they pick Papillion in this area?
Yeah, well, if you look at the type of development that we're seeing, it's quite diverse. For a long time, Papillion, great community, a lot of residential development. And probably 20, 25 years ago, using an industry term, we got enough rooftops to start attracting a lot of retail development. And so, 10 and 15 years ago, we saw a lot of new retail development. And that made Papillion even more attractive to residential development because now we had services in place that people wanted. Then as you think about the expansion of Papillion, particularly to the west, and where our jurisdiction now extends all the way to Interstate 80, includes the Highway 50 corridor, that's where you've seen significant industrial and business development, including the Google and Facebook data centers. And the Amazon distribution centers, for example. And so that has somewhat changed the dynamic of the city and the needs of the city. We're as long as we don't like to think of ourselves as a bedroom community, we really are not a bedroom community anymore. And the type of services that we need to provide, the type of housing that we need to provide, we need to broaden how we think about that because we have different needs now. With the thousands of jobs that are being created within our jurisdiction, we need to think about what's the right type of services to serve those businesses. What type of housing do we need to serve the people employed by those industries? And also, as I've talked to people in the community and housing needs, and obviously there's national, international challenges to housing affordability and things like that. There's also the idea that to really adequately serve the residents of the community, we need housing diversity. We need places for people who are aging out of their single-family home to move into. We need housing that supports our young members of the community, where they can stay in the community and afford to live here. I've had families tell me that their families are getting split. Because their parents are aging out of their house and need a place to live, and their children are getting old enough to look for housing, and these are things that every community deals with, and so this is not unique at all to Papillion, but it's something that the leadership of the community is recognized is something that we need to be actively involved in solving these problems.
If we judge this by social media, the most popular question out there is what's happening at 84th and 370, the Tower District. We saw at the recent City Council all the conversations about it. What do you see? What do you envision there in terms of that district? What are we going to see? Is it going to fill that housing need you're talking about from one level to the other? How much business are we talking about?
Yeah, that is a very exciting project for Papillion. That's been family-owned land for generations, and I will give them credit as they've thought over time about the possibility of selling that land. They really were concerned with legacy, making sure that they sold to a developer that would do a project that was a benefit to the community, and they could have broke it into pieces, sold it in a piecemeal fashion over time, but they didn't do that. They really were focused on benefiting the community with the sale of that land, and I think they found a really good developer, a really good project to finally let that land go. The Tower District, it's a mixed-use development. It has a lot of different housing types. It has high-end single-family. It has some smaller, more lower-price single-family.
Like starter homes?
Yeah, I mean, the market will somewhat dictate that,
Right.
but in terms of the size of the lots and some of their standards, there will be diversity. They've got some townhome and missing middle type of housing options, and some multifamily, and most likely some senior housing. So a real mix. And then on the commercial and office side, really looking at it from how do you build a walkable, friendly community, and a community that can really deal with fluctuations of the market. So it's kind of like a form-based design almost, where there's a focus on the pattern of development, the scale of the buildings, the interaction of the buildings with the street, and whether or not some of those boxes or those buildings become residential or office or commercial, or even a mix within a single building, it will still maintain the really intentional design of the neighborhood to maintain those values. And I think from a marketing standpoint, that lets them to be flexible and will probably make it more successful over time.
Papillion obviously is not an island. You know, we're butting up against all these other communities. How much do you have to work with those other cities to make sure that the connecting infrastructure matches up?
Yeah. Well, I think we have great working relationships with all of the other jurisdictions in Sarpy County, including Sarpy County. And really living by that philosophy that a rising tide raises all ships. What's good for Springfield, Gretna, La Vista, Bellevue is good for Papillion, and vice versa. And it's important to always remember that. Looking at infrastructure, working together on the sewer agency to meet the needs of all of the jurisdictions for future growth. We really needed to work together. And those relationships are really important.
You're going to look 10 years down the road, 2032. What do you see for Papillion in terms of population and just the overall look of the town, the city?
Yeah, population is an interesting discussion. The way that development happens in Nebraska, particularly in the Omaha metro area and in Papillion, a lot of our residential development is in sanitary improvement districts. And so that's a way to finance development. It puts more of the risk on the developer versus the city of Papillion. So the residents of Papillion aren't paying for infrastructure in new development. We come along later and annex. So the population of Papillion, roughly 23,000 people, does not include all of the residents in the SIDs, which is probably another 20,000 people or so. So the feel of the community is much larger than what the census might indicate.
Right.
So when you look at projections of say 70 or even 90,000 people over the next 20, 30 years, that seems like a huge shift, but really we're halfway there already.
Right.
We're a community of over 40,000 today if you include our entire jurisdiction outside of our city limits.
And the water plant is already supplying water to those. So if you count just the water customers, we're at like 40,000.
We're already providing services to that population. So when I think about 20 to 30 years from now, the sewer agency is an important part of that. Allowing development in the southern half of the county, which is where a lot of our growth will occur over the next 20 and 30 years.
This obviously it's a busy job. It's got you running all around. You got a couple sons. Obviously, they were very busy. How do you balance home life with work life and being able to make time to make sure you get out to all the events you need to get out to?
I think working for the city of Papillion, and I'll go back to when I first interviewed for the city. I very quickly learned, meeting the staff here, that this was a special place. Very professional, very thoughtful, very committed to really what we're all trying to do is make the city of Papillion the best that it can be. And I think the attitude of the city of Papillion as an employer reflects what we're trying to create as a city. We're trying to have that good balance of home and work. We're trying to focus on family. We're trying to make sure that we have a healthy environment. So that's why you see, I think, such longevity of city employees, because we have that healthy attitude that not just allowing a focus on your own family, but encouraging it. And I think that is a great way to teach the people who work here what we're trying to create citywide.
People may look you up and they've seen the interesting story that you gave your kidney to one of your children. What's that relationship? You think that increased the relationship? Obviously, you're close to your son, but for him to have your kidney, for you guys to go through that together, did that even build even stronger relationship?
Well, I'll say this: anytime you deal with adversity, you gain perspective. And going through that effort, as much as I would love to say or like that it wouldn't have happened, it's made me a better person. Because it's given me better perspective, and I'm better able to understand the challenges that other people have. So just as an employee of the city, working with people, working with diverse groups, and as a human, as a person, it's made me a better person. My son's doing great.
Yeah.
So thank you for asking. But I think that's important to remember as somebody who is serving the public. In my position now, especially my new position, managing people, that perspective, that understanding that we're all dealing with challenges, and that's not a bad thing. That actually can help us and make us better people.
I ask everyone who's on UnScripted this question because there's a lot of things that we highlight in the city a lot. We'd run it on Papillion Vision and things like that. But is there something that you like or something you want to talk about that doesn't get maybe the attention that it should, whether it's a service or a place to go or something to do in the city?
Well, yeah, I'll go back to your question about why Papillion. Yeah, there's a lot of growth here. A lot of that's, you can look at our location within the metro area, our access, our investment in infrastructure. But I would say, why would somebody choose Papillion over other areas of the metro area that have the same thing? And I think that there are a number of things. One is that feel.
Yeah.
It's hard to define, but that feel of the community, some of that's access to government, access to our elected officials. And I would say, too, the city's longtime investment in parks and recreation. The parks that we have, the commitment to maintaining those, the recreational services that we provide, the trail system, one of my personal favorites.
Right.
The programs that we offer, that commitment, that investment is really something that sets us apart. And it's not just the idea that, I have a recreation opportunity. Those activities connect people. That's how you build relationships. And I think that's a really important part of what makes Papillion such a wonderful place.
Yeah, you're in this whole mountain biking group, this little mini cult that we have with our boss. You're into that. I know I saw the Explore Papillion that he did with you. That's kind of one of your hobbies.
Yeah, the City Papillion holds a number of events. We have the race series. I was involved in a bike race that the city held downtown for a number of years. I think trails are really an important part of using our recreation system to also provide an alternative transportation opportunity.
Right.
And so it's really valuable. And as I talk to people about what they love about the community, trails are often high on the list. So my role, working with development, managing development, creating policy about development, parks and trails and that type of infrastructure is really important.
Mark, we appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time.
Well, thank you.
I forgot with COVID, I forget you can shake hands again. Join us again next time, Papillion Unscripted, where we again chat with someone who truly does help make Papillion feel like home.